Missing a few accelerators. If you know a VP of innovation at a major manufacturing company in the world, there's a huge opportunity to aggregate some of the most creative hardware innovators on the planet. You have a window of about 36 months because at the end of the 36 months, everybody's going to have a hardware accelerator and the early mover advantage is going to be gone. We even have the President of the United States on board. Thank goodness. So this is him at TechShop in Pittsburgh, which is really cool. The next day we had the Maker Fair. So when my friends now tell me and they come up and they say, this maker movement thing is kind of cute, I go, guys, you do not understand at all. This is changing the world as we know it. And I'm going to give you proof points a little bit later. For those of you who don't know what TechShop is 20,000 square feet. Every machine tool, woodworking tool, plastic tool, electronics tool, everything you need to make just about anything on the planet. We have hundreds of classes we teach at every location every month. We do not assume that you know how to use the tools. I highly recommend the welding date night. It's a lot of fun. You bring your significant other, we load you up with a bunch of tools, we scare the snot out of you because you are dealing with molten lead and molten steel. It's a lot of fun. It's a great evening. We also do corporate events. You gotta love these. Welding and wine, water jet and whiskey, sandblasting and sambuco. It's important that you keep the sequence in the correct way. We have 8 locations across the US so far. We have 30 locations in development globally. We are literally helping our members change the world, and we're doing it for a fraction of what it used to cost. 2 orders of magnitude cheaper than what it used to be. I'll talk more about that in a little bit. We're membership-based. $125 a month gives you access to the platform. It's DIY. We do not do it for you. You have to do it yourself. It's a machine shop, fabrication shop. Let me go through all that. All kinds of fun stuff. Our job is to do lots of fun things. What's happening? The tools are cheap. So a CNC mill used to be about $250,000. The software seat from Siemens was $100,000 by itself. The machine tool was another $150,000. We are now buying those for 20 grand. There's 1 order of magnitude, gone. We then resell them to our members for $125. That's 2 orders of magnitude if you're tracking it. Gone. Our members routinely tell me that their cost for launching a hardware company was in the $5,000 range. 5 grand. It used to be hundreds of thousands, if not millions. I was part of the dot-bomb like 15 years ago. We spent $30 million on hardware. $30 million, and now you've got the cloud, and we could have done the entire thing for about $1 million. Same thing is happening to hardware, and that's kind of new news. The tools are cheap, they are powerful. When you add the computer to it, so you don't have to know the geometry and you don't have to know the physics. Now in the end, you do need somebody to do the physics because I don't want to run in an automobile where nobody's done the math. And they're really easy to use. So here we go, machine tools. So these are right out of our location. We got the digital readout in the mill on it. We've got lathes. Those are $5,000 each. These used to be 50 grand a pop. There's the CNC tool. If you learn how to use Inventor, you now know how to not only work in steel, you know how to work in plastic and wood, textiles and other things. It's remarkable. Complete sheet metal shop, welding machine. Again, that's a great date night. Water jet, we love this thing. We call this our sexy beast. This thing will cut through 5 inches thick of anything on the planet. Anything. We can teach you how to use it in 2 hours. It's computer numerically controlled. You want a new granite countertop? Buy the granite, bring it in, 2 hours later, you can cut it out. This thing will cut titanium, it'll cut stainless steel, it'll cut cows, dogs, pigs, cats, even your in-laws. Don't do that. 1, 2, 3, boom. No, don't do that. Complete textiles lab. Woodworking, including computer numerically controlled routers. We can turn you into a master woodworker this week. Plastics lab. So I love the laser cutter. We call this our gateway drug. We're close to San Francisco, we can say that out loud, right? If you want to have a gateway drug, if you're a pusher, there are attributes to a drug that you need. It needs to be really easy to use, incredibly powerful, and super addictive, right? Perfect drug. That's the laser cutter. It takes you 2 hours to learn how to use it. It's incredibly easy to use, and it's extremely addictive because you can cut plastic, cut wood, cut leather, cut cloth, etch stones, etch glass, etch steel. We have had people accidentally launch businesses after learning how to use a laser cutter. We had a homeless man reboot his life after a single class on the laser cutter. 3D printing, of course, plastics lab. The injection molding machine, we had President Obama actually operate the machine to create his own coaster that had the presidential seal on one side and our logo on the back side. The vacuform machine is incredibly useful and very powerful tool. It's strange though, every time we open a new tech shop, the very first thing that's made on the vacuformer is a Star Trooper outfit. Every single time. There's a serious unmet demand for Star Trooper outfits, at least in the United States. We have all kinds of great software. Autodesk is our biggest funder to date. They've put in almost $15 million. Carl Bass is an observer on our board. They're a big believer in the maker movement and what's happening here. And National Instruments is our newest partner. We are now putting in LabVIEW, MyRios, MyDAX in every location across the United States. 1, 2, 3. Boom. We believe this is very important because of the whole Internet of Things. People need access to easy-to-use tools to be able to create the prototypes so that they can convince investors that they can make the thing that will help, whether it's healthcare, whether it's space travel, or whether you're trying to save on energy or whatever. You've got to be able to build that prototype. I'll talk about the prototype in a little bit. This is really important, and I just want to applaud National Instruments for one, giving me power of the clicker, and two, for the partnership. We've literally improved the quality of our lab there sixfold by the relationship with National Instruments. It's been a huge add for us. We also have a large project bay in case you want to work on your motorcycle or your electric car diversion or your urban assault vehicle. And that's a real urban assault vehicle. We also do events, which I've mentioned already, but what we're actually doing, and it's somewhat non-obvious, it's really not about the tools, it's about the community that shows up. When you build a large enough space with enough tools, you attract enough folks, you have the infrastructure in place. San Francisco, we have 1,200 members. In San Jose here, which is literally about 5 blocks from here, we have about 1,000 members. In our Mid-Peninsula, we have about 850 members. What happens when you get over 500 members is the location turns from a place that you have to go to get your project done to a place you want to go to get your project done. And the reason is that on any given evening, we'll have something on the order of 40 to 60 people on site. 40 to 60 of the most creative, educated, high-quality people in the city working on their projects. And what happens when you do that is that you become 2 degrees of freedom from success. Because if you're working on your project and you run into a problem, you can go to my dream consultant and say, I'm having a problem with this. And there's a very high probability that there's somebody on site right now that can help you fix that problem. In San Francisco, on a Friday, Saturday afternoon and early evening, we have university professors, we have designers from Frog Design and IDEO, we have Apple designers, we have hardware folks from HP and Cisco, we have artists, globally famous artists, we have students, locally famous, we have burners, of course we're in San Francisco, building these amazing pieces of art that pump out these huge balls of propane that blow up in a big huge thing of fire. 1, 2, 3, boom, yeah, it does that. But when you have 60 of those people on site and you run into a problem, you can get your solution now. You do not have to fork something on GitHub. You don't have to go online to Yahoo. You don't have to post something to Mechanical Turk. You literally raise your hand, say, I've got a problem, and it's solved now. That is the magic. It's not the tools, it's the community. And that's one of the reasons why we are on track to try to put one of these in every community in the world. Why? The largest untapped resource on the planet. For those of you who tweet, this will fit, so fire up your tweeting engines, please. The largest untapped resource on the planet. It is not oil, it is not natural gas, it is not sun. It is the free time, disposable income, and knowledge of the creative class. It's this. Clay Shirky says that Americans spend billions of hours a year watching commercials. The creative class has $470 billion in disposable income. This is not income used on healthcare, on education, on housing. This is the stuff that we spend on urban assault vehicles and frappuccinos. If we can get just a small portion of that $470 billion converted into doing something creative, and we get just a few hours of that hundreds of billions of hours, put them in a makerspace, they can and have changed the world already. I'm going to run through a bunch of applications because, again, it ticks me off when my friends say this maker movement, that's kind of cute. Yeah, tell me about it. The world's fastest electric motorcycle came out of our Menlo Park facility. It did 218 miles an hour on the Bonneville Salt Flats 2 summers ago. It just won Pikes Peak. Not only did it beat all the other electric motorcycles, it destroyed the Ducati Superbike, a $35,000 Ducati Superbike. When was the last time you saw a race and the second place finisher came in 19 seconds later? Holy cow. This guy had a beer and a massage by the time the Ducati came across the line. 1, 2, 3, boom. It was done in Menlo Park. It was done for tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars. It was done by a team of about 8 engineers who had a vision. They wanted to be the Tesla of superbikes. Jay Leno just bought one of these. Andy is doing a jetpack. That's a little more aggressive than a superbike. And he's serious about it. He now works for NASA, which is kind of cool. We have a bunch of satellites that have come out of our nanosat satellites that have come out of the San Jose facility. We've had 3 of them so far. So what you see there is a photograph on the desk in San Jose, and then you see the same satellite from the International Space Station looking down on the Indian Ocean. Danny came in. He was a 17-year-old kid, went to his parents and said, I want you to buy me a Segway. He didn't actually want that, but it was a great way to manipulate his parents. I want a Segway. Can you buy me one? No. Okay, if you're not going to buy me a Segway, will you buy me a membership at TechShop and give me a budget so I can build my own this summer? Okay. So he did. He went online. He found some help on the gyro stack because that's actually pretty hard. My guess is he had to use a MyRio in order to make it work. And then I love him because he upgraded it. You see on the left there is the world's first self-balancing 18-mile-an-hour electric bar stool. That's what I need, is a bar stool that I can't fall off and will outrun the cops. How the 17-year-old knew that's what I needed is beyond me. We have lots of artists. I love Tina. She's an accidental entrepreneur. She came in, took a class on Wednesday. We tell people that they needed to then come in and practice, so she came in on the Friday. In between, she had talked to her in-laws, found out her nephew was having a birthday party, so she decided to make him a cupcake topper, and all the kids that came got cupcake toppers. And she walked out with $200 in orders, not knowing she was in the cupcake topper business when she showed up. And then it went like geometric on her, so there were like 10 or 15 kids there, and they each had siblings, so she sold one to each of the siblings, and then just some math law there says there's a reasonable chance that it will happen again the next weekend, and then there will be 2 the weekend after that, 4 the weekend after that, and 8 the weekend after that. She literally went completely asymptotic, launched an Etsy store, now teaches classes on how to do Etsy stores. She recently came back from a honeymoon that she funded. They were on their honeymoon for 6 months. 1, 2, 3, boom. This was one class, Introduction to Laser Cutter class, completely remade her life. I love these guys just because it drives me nuts. I've got a nice car, and it's brilliant, and it tells me when it has a low tire. So this device, when it figures out that it has a low tire, pumps the tire up. Let's imagine that. You have an engine. You could probably run a compressor on that, and you have the intelligence that will tell you that the tire is low, but you can't pump it up? It's like, come on, Ford, GM, somebody, I don't want this problem. I want it to go away. So these guys have raised about $20 million to help make that happen. Lots of 3D printers. This woman completely remade her life, quit her six-figure-a-year job. She sells knitting needle gauges in the $2 billion a year knitting industry. This one was really phenomenal. Again, some of the things that have changed at the personal level. Kickstarter has come along. So historically, if you're a 28-year-old designer doing angle brackets for Macy's and you want to get out of doing that and you want to own a lighting company or a lighting business, you couldn't, actually. There's nobody that's going to fund that. You'd have to take a second mortgage on your house, convince your wife that you're a really good designer, and in fact, you can launch this company. There's no angel group on the planet that will talk to you because there is no exit. It's called a lifestyle business. There was no way to launch a lifestyle business. Kickstarter has come along, and all of a sudden you can launch lifestyle businesses by pre-selling units. So I ran into him and I said, what are you doing, Max? And he kind of walked me through it. He says, well, I've learned Arduino, learned that a couple weeks ago, and so I got the lamp thing working, and I found the Tyvek, and that's going to work. I learned how to use the laser cutter, and I do this nice little living hinge. So I'm going to launch a $60,000 Kickstarter campaign. Like, dude, 60 grand. The average Kickstarter campaign over 2,500 bucks doesn't fund. 60 grand puts you in the top 10%. Do you really need 60 grand? And he walked me through. It's like, look, I know how to do Arduino. I don't know how to do embedded processors. I'm going to have to pay a firm to help me design the embedded processor component. I don't know anything about lithium-ion batteries. I'm going to need that to be fully integrated. I need to be able to produce enough of these so that I could get the volume discounts for the wood and for the integrated circuits. I need $60,000. He showed me his Gantt chart. It's like, the guy did his homework. You need 60 grand. Good for you. He raised $480,000 and all of a sudden had a production problem. Because in his Gantt chart, he had designed a manufacturing process that would produce 600 of them. But he got it fixed. We have not lived in an era, at least since 1932, when the SEC made it illegal to raise money using newspapers. They certainly didn't have access to these tools. We have never lived in an era where a 28-year-old can pursue his dream, get the market to fund it, and they can actually manufacture at volume and do that all inside of 90 days. 1, 2, 3. Let me keep going. Oru Kayak. I love this one in particular because I didn't believe it. I got the MBA, and so I've got this filter around size of market, whether it makes sense, blah, 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 blah. They kind of beat that into you. And so I come upstairs in our San Francisco location, and I see this guy literally standing up on a table, wrestling 14 feet of plastic. And it stood out. I mean, I don't usually see, our tables are pretty high. They're like 4 feet high, and he's up there at like 8 feet trying to fold this big, huge thing over. And so I go over and say, hey, I'm Mark. Who are you? He says, I'm Anton. Anton, what in the world are you doing? It's like, I am building the world's first collapsible kayak. And my instant thought is, that is the stupidest idea I've ever heard of in my life. A collapsible kayak? Who's going to want that? Like you're competing with the leaky boat company. It's like, I want wingless aircraft. I mean, what are you thinking? And so he walks through what he's doing, and thankfully I was completely and totally wrong. He raised like $450,000 on Kickstarter. He was the season-ending Shark Tank player and raised $250,000 for a small piece of his company on Shark Tank. He was just recently, I heard him on like NPR as one of the top 10 gifts to give to your athletically inclined partner. And again, I completely didn't believe it. He launched his company for a few $1,000s. This is a guy who, his very first project was a lunar robot, a little overachiever. These guys had a $10 million exit, roughly, we think, remote-controlled video conference telepresence robot. This guy's doing desktop diamond manufacturing. Patrick came in and asked, what classes do I need to take to learn how to use the tools to be able to launch an iPad case company? 90 days later, he didn't know how to use the tools. What classes do I need to take? 90 days later, he had sold $1 million in product. Does anybody have that case? Anybody have a dodo case? Just, nobody here? Well, you're kind of out of it. So the President of the United States carries his iPad case, as does Jay-Z and a whole bunch of other folks. They did $4 million in the first year, $10 million in the second, $35 million in his third year. We think they're on track to do $60 million. He owns his own manufacturing company up here in San Francisco. It's all US made, all US grown, all US built. And he didn't know how to use the tools. 1, 2, 3, boom. But none of these people have changed the world. These next ones have. Yes, Square came out of our Menlo Park facility. This is James McKelvey. He's the guy that came up with the idea. A guy who worked for him at one point was named Jack Dorsey of Blogger and Twitter fame. So he loses a commission on a piece of art, James does, calls his buddy up and says, Jack, I've got this idea to upend the merchant banking industry in the United States. Can we leverage your network to be able to make some changes? So Jack invites him out, and they come in and they talk to ostensibly the 10 smartest investors on the planet. Go in with their PowerPoint, talk about what's broken with the merchant banking industry. And so they go ask Jack, and these are like Vinod Khosla and John Doerr. These are the top guys, because Dorsey can pull the crowd in. So they say, you know, Jack, we know who you are, blogger, Twitter, got it. You're a social media guy, love it. This James guy, merchant banker, Goldman Sachs, Chase Manhattan, Visa, MasterCard. Who will know James is a glass blower from St. Louis. A glass blower from St. Louis. You know how long that meeting lasted? They turned him down. The smartest investors in the planet, when they heard the idea from Jack Dorsey and a glass blower, they turned him down. So what happens was the glass blower comes to Menlo Park, learns how to use the electronics, learns how to use a mill, builds a prototype, Jack writes the code, and they go back out and they meet our friends in the venture capital world. And instead of showing PowerPoints and talking about this amazing thing, they just showed it to them. Give me your credit card. So the guys rip out their black American Express card. They took $50 off the top 10 investors in the valley and never gave them money back. I love it. Their first 500 bucks. They raised $10 million in their Series A, and as they say, the rest is history. They got a $6 billion valuation. They'll do $32 billion in transactions. They have 1,000 employees. But here's the kicker, right? If Jack Dorsey can't raise money from the world's smartest investors without a prototype, how do you expect your teams to do it without a prototype? And if you have to go through what is assumed to be $1 million stage 1 gate to get to that prototype, how many of your best ideas are ever going to get through the stage? And I know the answer to that. It's like 1 in 10 at best. It's 1 in 1,000. But the world has changed. You can build these prototypes for less money and in less time than it takes to hold this meeting. 1, 2, 3. Boom. So quickly, a couple of others. The world's most efficient data cooling center system also came out of our Menlo Park facility. The world's first nitrogen detection system for farmers that will save them money and reduce the amount of fertilizer runoff into the rivers, helping to reduce the size of the dead zone at the end of the Mississippi. Also came out of our Menlo Park facility. They've raised about $20 million. BioLite won a Fast Company social hardware startup of the year. They came out of our San Jose location. This is the world's cheapest drip irrigation system. It's no longer in trials. It's actually being distributed around the globe in Asia, in India, and Africa. And then clearly my favorite is Jane Chen's company, which came out of the Stanford D School. Love the Stanford D School. They do all kinds of great stuff. So the design challenge was hundreds of thousands of babies die every year because their hypothalamus isn't fully developed. They get born 2 months or 2 weeks too early. They have 1 hour to get to an incubator, or they die. It's like 400 to 600,000 babies die every year because they can't get to an incubator fast enough. So their idea was, are there some polymers that we could heat up in an oven or over boiling water or with some electricity that would be able to extend that hour for some more time? And so sure enough, they got a team together, including Naganan Murthy, the polymer chemist, on the team, and they came up with a pouch that would add another hour, so you get 2 hours. And then something interesting happened that's been happening for decades. They graduated and lost access to the tools. Historically, that meant they would go get a job and bury this brilliant idea, because historically it would have cost them hundreds of thousands, if not millions, to get through the prototype stage. Instead, they came to TechShop Menlo Park, and then magic happened. I talked about community earlier. That's actually the business we're in. What happened was Naganan was sitting down at a table, and a polymer chemist with 30 years experience came up to him, sat down, and offered to help. And within weeks, it went from 1 hour to 4 hours. When you think geometrically, that means a 900% increase in its impact. This blanket has already saved 87,000 babies globally. 1, 2, 3, boom. So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. I told you I was going to do this early on, right? We are living in a completely different space than we were 10 years ago. You can become a member at TechShop. People have moved to be near our cities. We've had venture capital teams temporarily moved for 3 months at a time so that they could be on site somewhere at one of our locations. If you don't want to do that, find a makerspace, build a makerspace, do something. You've got to get access to the tools. Get your company to let you have access and let other folks have access to the tools. I know that's challenging, but it's the new world. So here's the challenge. I'm speaking to my peeps. These are all engineers. I love geeking out at NI. I mean, it is a lot of fun. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Make something for somebody you care about this Christmas. Make them something and give it to them, because it is fundamentally different than buying something. So here's my little story here. So I bought a 3D printer for the house because I'm in the space, I have to have one, and I want my 16-year-old to be exposed to Thingiverse and MakerBots and so forth. So I bought it, and then I had to set it up, and got it set up, which is actually fairly painless, and then needed a test print. But I've got a conference call and so forth, so I just go on Thingiverse. I'm rooting around trying to find something interesting, and I stumble on a rose. It's like, perfect, I'll print a rose as my test print. And so the rose is going. Now, the reason I chose a rose is that about 5 years ago, my wife developed an allergy to roses, specifically, and then flowers in general. And there are a lot of men in the room. That sucks, right? You fly in late at 10 o'clock at night in LAX. It's Valentine's Day. You're just going to barely make it home. You hit the grocery store, grab a bolt of flowers, go home, and you're good to go, right? You're good to go. I don't get to do that anymore. I actually have to plan. And so unfortunately, I stumbled on Tiffany's, and I started getting her Tiffany's jewelry. That was a really bad substitute, very expensive. And they're not open at midnight. You actually have to plan. It was just stupid. That was a stupid mistake. So she's been getting Tiffany's now for Valentine's Day, because I can't buy her roses. So the test print's going, and so I finish my meetings, I pull it off, clean it up a little bit, and my wife comes home, and I say, "Hey babe, I made you a flower." I know the resolution is 1 mil or something. This thing is ugly. I mean, look at the color. Is that? I mean, it's just remarkable. I was a hero. She was thrilled. "Oh my gosh, this is the first rose you've given me in 5 years." Okay, yeah, that's the first rose I give you. That was really thoughtful. It's like the first thing you printed on. I was like, yeah, that was a test print. This is on our headboard. Why? Because I made it. Now, you guys, engineers, you know I didn't make it. I mean, I set the damn test print up, hit print, it downloaded it, printed it out. The best I can say is I cleaned it up and I've thought of the idea. Doesn't matter, right? There was a story behind it. There was a rationale behind it. It was personal. And as a result, this is worth way more than a Tiffany's locket. And that's interesting because we're moving into an era where you're going to be able to customize, mass customize, change, manipulate, develop. Your kids are going to be able to do it. They're going to be able to give you incredibly meaningful Christmas gifts. And it's going to fundamentally change the manufacturing supply chain for consumer goods. And we know the Internet of Things is going to completely change the way things work on the back end and for industrial. So we are literally on the ground floor of the largest change in all of human history, and I encourage you to join the revolution. Thank you very much.